Hello, my name is Keshwani. This Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to improve our vocabulary. Today is our quiz number. Today is the day for our quiz number 13. Today we'll have a quiz on all the words that we learned on day 61 through 65. For those of you who have been watching this series on a regular basis, you know that at the end of every 5 days we have a quiz. And today it is quiz number 13 that will cover, as I said, on the words that will cover the words that we learned from day number 61 through 65. Let's get going. Unlike the regular days where we go at a slower pace, where we go in depth, where I slow down to show you the pronunciation and so forth, here we do not have the luxury to go into that much detail. I will not show you the pronunciation. I will not write down the pronunciation on the blackboard, and it's just a quiz. Okay, number one. The very first one that we learned on day number 61 was simile. Do you know what that means? It's pronounced simile. A little while ago I said that I'm not going to put down the pronunciation, but once in a while I just can't help myself. Simile. A simile is when we compare two dissimilar objects by using words like or as. So when we're comparing two dissimilar objects by using the words like or as, s is called, it's my accent, you understand, is called simile. For example, you might say, he's weak as water. Well, he's weak as water, that's a simile. Or you ask somebody, well, how come Mary didn't come to work today? And she said, Mary died yesterday. She is dead as a dodo. She is dead as a dodo. Well, this is an as actually, not a like. Oh, there we go, as. What's a dodo, do you know? A dodo is a bird. Why dead is a dodo? Dodo is a bird that no longer exists. It's extinct. Let's do a little digression, see if you remember the words that we learned from a long time ago. Do you know the antonym of extinct? Do you know the antonym of extinct? Extinct means it no longer exists. Antonym of word extinct would be extant. Extant means something that is still in existence. Dodo is extinct, but owls are not. Do you understand? Extant. When did we learn this word? We learned this word on day number 14. So anyway, that's a simile. That's when you compare two dissimilar objects by using the word is or like. The next word we learned on day number 61 was the word that is related to simile, and that word was similitude. Similitude means exactly what it sounds like. It means similarity. Similarity. Something two things that closely resemble each other. A replica. A replica is a similitude. A copy is a similitude. It's a replica. Two things that are very similar to each other. They resemble each other. Similitude. The next word that we learned was also related to simile, and that word was verisimilitude. What does that mean? Verisimilitude means something that has the appearance of being true. Something that has appearance of being true or real or genuine. Something that appears to be real, something that appears to be genuine, something that is plausible, something that is likely. is said to have verisimilitude. So if someone says, well, he gave me some story and he added these details here and there, he added these details to his story, and I suspect it is simply to lend verisimilitude to his story. He told me why he was late and so forth, and he gave me this story and this and that, and very casually here and there he made little remarks, but I suspect that that was simply to lend verisimilitude to his story. It was simply to lend appearance of truth to his stories. And the word was verisimilitude. If I remember correctly, the example that I gave you last time when we learned the word on day number 61 was somebody asks you as you're talking to your boss on the phone to tell your boss that you're not going to come to work today, and as you hang up the phone, the other person asks, oh, why were you coughing so much on the phone? It's because I was talking to my boss and I want to make it sound like I'm not feeling well. I wanted to make it sound like I was sick. So to lend, because that's what I told him, that I'm not coming to work because I'm sick. So to lend verisimilitude to my story, I was faking the cough. To lend appearance of truth to my story, I was faking the cough. The very last word that we learned was, again, it's related to verisimilitude, which is veritable, which simply means authentic, real. Authentic, real, genuine. Something that is unquestionably true, something that you do not need to doubt the authenticity of. And that is said to be veritable. Do you understand? Yes, I can tell by looking at it. It is a veritable Rolex. It's not a copy, it's not a knockoff. It's a real thing. Of course, you know this. A knockoff is something that is not real, something that is not veritable, something that is bogus, something that is copy. A knockoff. Let's keep on going. On day number 62, on day 62, the very first one we learned was tentative. 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 If something is tentative, something is said to be provisional. Something that is provisional. Something that is not yet a done deal. I'm going to get rid of this marker. This marker is dying. Something that is not yet a done deal. Something that is not yet certain. Something that is, it should say is, something that is not yet certain, something that is not a done deal yet is said to be tentative. Yes, we made a tentative arrangement to meet tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, which means it's not a done deal, it's not sure, we have to still confirm it tomorrow morning, but as it stands right now, we have made a tentative arrangement. It's not a done deal yet. We're going to confirm it tomorrow morning, whether or not the meeting will actually take place. Something that is iffy. It's a very colloquial way of saying it. Something that is iffy, as in something that is not for sure. It's said to be tentative. We have a tentative meeting, we have a tentative arrangement to do something tomorrow morning. Colloquial. And of course you know what colloquial means. Colloquial means informal language. Not a formal language, informal speech. Colloquial is actually the word that we learned on day number 5. So if you want to learn this word in detail, you can watch the video for day 5. Just type in vocabulary words, day 5, and you will find the video that contains where we learned the word colloquial. And finally, but the second word that we learned on day number 62 was this word right here, provisional. I left out the L. That was the second word that we learned, provisional. Provisional means exactly the same thing as tentative. They are synonym, which is why it's there. If something is provisional, provisional arrangement is arrangement where it is not for sure yet. It has to be confirmed. It's a provisional arrangement. It's a provisional understanding. It's a tentative understanding. It's not for sure yet. Provisional. Something that is not sure. Something that is not certain. Finally, the last word that we learned on day number 62 was a word which has nothing to do with what we're talking about, what we have been talking about so far. Completely unrelated word, and the word was edifice. Edifice. Edifice is a grand old building. It's a grand, it doesn't have to be old, it's a grand building. It's a grand building, a grand structure. A building that is imposing, in its size and appearance. A building, a structure that is imposing in its size and, I forget how I said it, in its size and appearance. And that's said to be an edifice. So if you see a grand building, a huge structure, that is called an edifice. Let's move on then. Day number 63. The very first word we learned on day number 63 was Christen. Christen. Christen has two meanings. It has a literal meaning and it has a metaphorical meaning. It has a literal meaning and it has a metaphorical meaning. Literally, Christen means to baptize somebody. To baptize. That's what it means literally. Metaphorically, it simply means to give something or someone a name. To give something or someone a name means to christen it or them or he or she. For example, when I'm doing the math videos, you always hear me say, for example, if we have a triangle here, you will hear me say, let's christen the three vertices so we can talk about this triangle. It's easier to talk about the triangle instead of saying start from there and go there and go there, instead of saying this triangle, not that triangle. It's easier to christen its vertices so that we can refer to it. Let's christen its vertices. A, B, and C. There you go. We just christen its vertices. Now it's triangle ABC. It means to name something. Christen. Let's keep on going. Second word that we learned on day number 63 was in fact not a word. It's a phrase. It's a Latin phrase, and the phrase was ceteris paribus. It should have something like that. Ceteris paribus. What does it mean? It's Latin, as I said. It's an adverb. It comes from Latin. And you find this thing in many college textbooks, and many a times I found out that kids read the books and they see this phrase all the time, but they never bother to actually learn what it means, and never bother to actually learn how to pronounce it. Ceteris paribus, which simply means all things being equal. All things being equal. All all other things constant. All other things or factors being constant. In economics textbooks, for example, you might read that when price of something goes up, we'll expect people to buy fewer of it. Demand for the thing will go down. And if you're a strict economist, you will know that what I just said is not correct here. It should not be the word that I should use. What I should have said is not demand, but what is known as quantity demanded. We're not going to go in there. I'm just going to keep it simple. The quantity that people want, quantity demanded. In other words, how much people want to buy of something will go down. And then at the end, they will qualify their statement by saying, let's put this word qualified here. They will qualify this statement by saying, by inserting this caveat, ceteris paribus. What does it mean? Ceteris paribus. It means all other things being constant, which means that all the other factors that could possibly influence the consumer's behavior in deciding whether or not to buy this particular good, all the other factors that might influence that decision, they are all assumed to be constant. We are assuming that all of a sudden he does not become unemployed, his income stays the same, the price of other goods stay the same, anything else that you can possibly imagine stays the same. If everything is assumed to be constant, every other factor that might influence your behavior in determining whether or not to buy this particular object, if you assume all the other factors to be constant, then in that condition, if the price goes up of the good, you will suspect that the person would buy fewer of it. And that condition is called ceteris paribus. All other things being constant. Ceteris paribus. Now I just used the word qualify and I also just used the word caveat. Let's learn both of those words. So what I said was that they will say that as long as everything else stays the constant, another way of saying as long as everything stays the constant, another way of saying would be ceteris paribus. So what the textbook in the economics, what you find is that if the price goes up, the quantity that people will demand of that particular good is expected to go down, ceteris paribus. See, they qualify that statement by saying ceteris paribus. What does it mean to qualify in statement? I'm digressing here big time. To qualify in statement means to put condition on it, to restrict it, to attach strings to it, to qualify in statement. If you excuse me just 1 second, I'll actually tell you when we learn the word qualify, but I'm going to have to get out of the camera for about 10 seconds, okay? I'll be right back. Just give me one. I'll be right back. We want to find out when we learn the word qualify. Qualify, of course, has two meanings. We know, everybody knows what it means to qualify for a job, but the question is, what does it mean to qualify in a statement? That's what we're talking about. That's something we learned on day number 27. And if you go and watch that video, not only you will learn this word, qualify, but you will learn some other interesting, useful words that will help you get a better score if you're preparing for any of these exams. If you're going to sit for the SAT or the GRE or GMAT. That's the idea. These are vocabulary words that that one expects to find on these exams. But I want you to learn this word not just for the sake of preparing for the exam. I want you to learn these words because simply for the sake of learning them. These are good words to know. Expand your vocabulary. Makes you a better speaker, makes you a better writer, and people take you more seriously. Do you understand? When you stop using a third grade vocabulary and when you start using grown-up vocabulary. Anyway, enough of the talk. The word was qualify. The next word that we learned is the word actually that I just used a little while ago, which is caveat. Caveat. A caveat is a warning. It's a warning. It's a notice. It's a caution. So they will say that as long as if the price of something goes up, people will buy fewer of it. And then there is they qualify their statement by giving you this this caveat, this warning, this notice, ceteris paribus. So the warning here, the notice here is that assuming that everything else stays the same. Everything else being, when they say everything else is the same, everything being all the factors that could possibly affect your decision whether or not to buy certain good. Do you understand? All the other factors that could possibly influence your decision in purchasing that good. The next word that we learned, the very last word that we learned on day number 63 was a word which has nothing to do with anything at all what we've been talking about. The word was thrice. It's a simple word, and yet many a times I've come across people who do not know the word thrice. It simply means to have 3 times. It just means 3 times. Just like we have twice. Everybody knows twice, which means something that happens more than something that happens 2 times. But for some strange and inexplicable reason, when you throw thrice in front of somebody, either they do not understand it, or a lot of the times people do understand what it means, thrice, but it's not part of their it's not part of their working vocabulary. They would not say thrice, they would say 3 times. I don't know why. It's not part of their working vocabulary. As I explained to you before many times, vocabulary has 3 levels to it. First level is where you recognize the word. Second level is when you know the word. So you may know the word, you may understand what it means, and you can articulate what it means. And the third level is where you begin to use it in your own speech and in your own writing without actually realizing that you're doing it. You start using it subconsciously. It becomes part of your working vocabulary. It ceases to be a vocabulary word. Do you understand? And for some strange reason, thrice is maybe they know the word, it's the second level of their vocabulary, but it's not part of their working vocabulary. People don't use it. I don't know why. Similarly, here's another word which I find fascinating, because many a times you have to explain to people what it means. Fortnight. And again, they would not use the word fortnight, even if they know the meaning of the word. Even if they know the meaning of the word, I found many a times where people don't actually use it, even though they know the word fortnight. It simply means something that happens. Something that happens once every 2 weeks. And we learned the word fortnight. I don't know when we learned the word fortnight. I do not have it here. We're day number 4. Day 4. So instead of saying, they would say that I get paid bi-weekly. That's what they would say. I get paid bi-weekly. They would hesitate to say I get paid fortnightly. Well, if you get paid bi-weekly, you get paid fortnightly. It's much better to say I get paid fortnightly than to say I get paid every other week. Do you understand? Similarly, there's a word which means something that happens once every 2 years. I won't go into it right now, but you will learn that word. If you go to day number 4, you will learn the word fortnight, and you will also learn the word which means something that happens once every 2 years, as opposed to happening twice a year. Something that happens twice a year is called semiannual. Let's go to day number 64. On day 64, the very first one we learned was an impasse. What's an impasse? An impasse is a deadlock. It's a deadlock. It's a situation where neither party is willing to yield, to compromise, to give in. So if there are 2 parties engaged in certain talk, and all of a sudden they reach a point where neither party is willing to budge, neither party is willing to yield, neither party is willing to compromise, they are both being stubborn, well, you reach a deadlock. It's an impasse. It's a stalemate. You can't get out of it. There is no way out because neither party is willing to budge. It's a stalemate. It's a stalemate. And that is called an impasse. The next word we learned on day number 64 was Mar. It's a verb. Mar. Mar. What does it mean to mar? Mar means to tarnish. To tarnish. To blemish. To disfigure. To stain. To damage, to deface, to stain, to blemish. So if you mar somebody's reputation, you damaged their reputations, you disfigured it, you ruined it, you blemished it, you stained it by saying something about their character, you marred it. The next word that we learned on day number 64 was heinous. Something heinous is something horrendous, something unbelievably shocking, something that is shockingly evil. A heinous crime, a crime that is horrendous, something that is atrocious, something that is unbelievably evil. A heinous crime. So that was the end of day number. Actually, that was not the end of the day number 64. The next word that we learned on day number 64 was furtive. What does furtive mean? Furtive means to do something in secret, hidden, not disclosed. Something that is not disclosed, something that is done in a hidden manner is said to be done furtively. That will be the adverb, furtively. Not disclosed, secret, hidden. Another word that we learned that was related to this word was surreptitious. Surreptitious actually was the word that we learned on day number 6. And again, if you're interested in learning the proper pronunciation, you can go to day number 6 and actually watch this thing in detail. Here, as I keep reminding you, we are here for a quiz. If I took as much time as I do in regular videos, this video will become very long. As it is, these quiz videos are already very long. They are half-hour long. I don't want to make it even longer. Surreptitious is the word. It simply means to do something in a secret manner. Something to do something in a something to do something in a secret, to do something in a secret or sneaky manner when nobody's looking. And if you do something in a sneaky manner, you would say that if something is done in a way that nobody sees it, is done in a very sneaky way, you would say that it was done surreptitiously, sneaky manner, in a sneaky way. The next word that we learned actually had nothing to do with what we're talking about here, furtive and surreptitious. It's a completely unrelated word. And the next word was clement. Clement means to be lenient, to be lenient, to be merciful, to be merciful, not to be too harsh, not to be too harsh. And from the word clement, which is an adjective, clement, from the word clement we have the word clemency, which is a noun. So if a judge shows clemency, the judge is showing leniency. He is being lenient towards an offender, towards a wrongdoer. If someone is found to be guilty of something and the judge hands out not very strict punishment, you say the judge showed clemency. He was clement, he was lenient, he was not too harsh. And from the word clement, we have the word inclement. It will not be inclement. And in my part of the world where I live, in the winter time, we hear all the time radio stations and television and school websites and so forth talk about inclement weather. When we talk about inclement weather, inclement is made up of two parts. In means not, and clement means lenient or not too harsh. So if something is not too harsh, then something is very strict, something is very terrible. Inclement means harsh, not mild. Inclement means harsh, not mild. Not mild because clement means mild. Something that is severe. Something that is stormy. So when they said that the school is closed today due to inclement weather, they're saying that the school is not going to be open due to severe weather, harsh weather conditions, inclement weather. That's the opposite of clement, which means lenient or soft. Let's move on to last day, day number 65. The very first word we learned on day number 65 was an apocalypse. What is an apocalypse? Apocalypse. What is an apocalypse? An apocalypse is a prophetic declaration, a prophetic disclosure, a grand revelation. Grand revelation, or prophetic disclosure. And the adjective would be apocalyptic or sometimes apocalyptical. If an apocalypse is a prophecy usually of bad things that are going to happen. Apocalypse. The next word that we learned was cataclysm. 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 A cataclysm is a disaster. It's a disaster. It's a huge disaster. A devastating flood is said to be cataclysm or cataclysmic. A huge flood is said to be cataclysmic. That will be the adjective, cataclysmic. While we are at it, since we're talking about a huge a devastating flood, the next word that we learned was deluge. A deluge is a huge flood. A flood of unbelievable proportion. Not your regular old flood, but a huge flood. A very heavy downpour would qualify as a deluge. The word deluge can be used literally, as in huge flood, or it can also be used metaphorically. One might complain of having a deluge of complaints in their office, or deluge of bills arriving in the mail, or deluge of just junk mail. Every time you open your mailbox, there's a junk mail. You feel like you're drowning in the flood of junk mail. It's a deluge of junk mail, deluge of complaints, deluge of bills. So it doesn't have to be used in its literal sense. It can be used metaphorically. It can be used in its metaphorical sense. Let's keep on going. The very last word that we use on that we learned on day number 65 was actually a very simple word, and the word was calamity. What is a calamity? Calamity, apocalypse, deluge, they're all related. They all means disaster, a huge disaster. A huge disaster is said to be a calamity. And the noun adjective would be calamitous. An extraordinarily serious occurrence that causes huge damage of life and property is said to be a calamity, a cataclysmic occurrence. That was the end of it. That was the end of our day number 65. That's the end of our quiz number 13. I will continue tomorrow on day number 66, and we'll keep on going. At the end of every 5 days, we'll have our quizzes, as you know. So we'll go on tomorrow from day number 66 through 70, and then we'll have our next quiz, quiz number 14, which will cover the days which will cover the words that we will learn on day 66 through 70 every 5 days. Do you understand? I'll see you tomorrow, okay? On day number 66. Bye now.